My fellow dudes and dudettes, this is Todd Luck with a completely radical review of Turtles of Grayskull #1, put out by the totally righteous folks at Dark Horse Comics. This is available right now. You can skate on over to your local comic shop or read it online if you're down like that on Kindle. This is a totally tubular 4-issue miniseries teaming up those totally cool brothers, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, with those epic dudes from Masters of the Universe. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Never before have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles teamed up with an iconic franchise like this, and they'll never, ever do anything like this ever again. What? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Naruto is coming out in November? But the Turtles of Grayskull miniseries won't even be over by then. What do these guys do? They just team up with everybody all the time? In a word, yes. It's actually been true since the early days of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise that they've constantly done crossovers with properties that have been owned by different creators or different companies. And these types of crossovers have always been common, and they've always been expected of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a brand. And they've been done in all kinds of different mediums: action figures, comic books, live action TV, cartoons, you name it. I don't know which comic book character holds the Guinness Book of World Records for most crossovers with other properties. It would have to be either Ninja Turtles or Batman. But what I will say is I think the Turtles have had their crossover card punched so many times. All they have to do is fight Predator and team up with Tarzan, and they'll earn a free pizza. And so a crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is not necessarily unique, but I think the way Turtles of Grayskull is being done is unique. So Turtles of Grayskull is actually a toy line, and it tells the story of Shredder and Krang teaming up with Skeletor to create an army of mutants in Eternia, like mutated He-Man you see there on your right. And so the Turtles come to Eternia to aid the heroic warriors to stop the evil plot. And so it has its own unique packaging, which looks really cool. And there have been 3 waves of it released. There should be a 4th wave released soon, and more waves coming. And it's got gorgeous artwork on the back of the packaging telling the story. And no, a Shredder ooze pit has not been released. Hopefully at some point it will be. It also has its own series of mini comics that are packaged in with the figures from each wave, and they are drawn by Freddie Williams, who is also the artist on the miniseries. I am a child of the 80s, and turtles are my favorite animal, so I absolutely adore Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've loved them since the very first episode aired. I've watched most of the cartoons. I've seen all the movies. I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventure comics from Archie back in the 90s and all the spin-offs they had. Curiously enough, even with my love for the franchise, I never had any turtle toys as a kid, and I have kept that habit as an adult and actually don't own any figures of the Turtles. I've only sampled a handful of the regular Turtle comics, and I've always been impressed every single time I pick them up, but I've always had other things I'm reading and just haven't got around to taking that plunge yet into the regular Turtle comics. As much as I love Turtles, I love Masters of the Universe even more. It's always been one of those franchises I've collected since I was a kid. I have an extensive but not excessive collection of figures from every era of the franchise. I've read all of the comics. I have seen all of the episodes of all of the series that have been on TV. The figures you're seeing in these photos are from the new Masters of the Universe Origins line that's been coming out in the last 4 years. And I don't tend to do toy reviews for Masters on this channel because there's so many other people who are already doing that on YouTube. I tend to do Masters of the Universe comic book reviews along with reviews of the new animated series. And I've also been doing some updates about the figures that you can get on Mattel Creations. because that's where the vintage origin figures have now gone. You can get them online. But needless to say, I do have a pretty extensive knowledge and background in Masters of the Universe, and that is why I was so excited to see Tim Seeley and Freddie Williams own this miniseries. So a few years ago, DC Comics had the license for Masters of the Universe, and they put out a new version of the mythos, and I really didn't care for the story or the artwork for this version, but after that wrapped up, DC Comics put out He-Man Thundercats using a version of Masters of the Universe much more familiar to fans, and it had this absolutely gorgeous artwork by Freddie Williams, and it was amazing. After that, Freddie Williams drew an Injustice Masters of the Universe miniseries with Tim Seeley as the writer, and Tim Seeley came on there with just an encyclopedic knowledge of the franchise. He just poured into the writing and just such a great understanding of the world, and it was fantastic. Seeley would write DC's final Masters miniseries with another artist called Masters of the Multiverse, definitely worth picking up. But Seeley and Williams wanted to do at least one more miniseries they didn't get to do, and that was a crossover between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Masters of the Universe. And Williams has put out some artwork about what that could have looked like online. And this is, stuff based on the original concept they had back at DC. This is not related to Turtles of Grayskull. Turtles of Grayskull, as I said before, has its own story that was conceived of by the folks at Mattel. But Rob David over at Mattel, when they were trying to figure out who to put on the comics, recommended Tim Seeley and Freddie Williams. So again, Williams is doing the artwork for the mini comics, but the story is being done by the folks at Mattel. Seeley, in an interview on For Eternia, said that he was going to try to be consistent with the mini comics, but I'm not entirely certain what that means because there's just way too many contradictions for them to be in the same continuity as the mini comics. How they get to Eternia is different. There's a couple characters who should be mutated who aren't. April is not where she should be. But admittedly, the mini comics were also contradicting themselves about how the Turtles got to Eternia, where that portal was that zapped them there. So Mattel is not really taking the story to Turtles of Grayskull particularly seriously, and neither should you. It's just some good-natured nonsense to sell us some toys, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think this cover captures it perfectly, incredibly iconic with He-Man and the Ninja Turtles. It's a little weird that Raph and Don are both in the background like that, but the only thing I swear I'm going to remember from this miniseries 20 years from now is Michelangelo in your face in the bottom corner there with that He-Man wig. Williams has said he wanted to draw Turtles for a while now, and I gotta say, I think he draws Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters as well as he draws Masters of the Universe characters. I think his detailed, absolutely beautiful artwork is appropriate for both franchises. And I want to give Dark Horse props on this issue because it's still only 20 pages of story for $4. But in the back, they do have 4 pages of Freddie Williams character designs, which are a great treat to get in the back as a bonus, plus 2 pages showing the development of the cover from his pencils to the finished product, which again is a really cool added bonus. So I'm just going to show you some of the interior artwork while I talk about the story. So the story for the first issue begins with a bunch of exposition, and then it leads into a big battle, which barely gets started, and then something happens to take the story on a complete tangent, and then the issue just ends. I'm not quite sure where they're going with this, It seems like it's probably going to be focused more on the tangent and not on the greater conflict that is seen in the mini comics. Seeley has said he doesn't want to be redundant with the story of the mini comics and, kind of take this miniseries in its own direction. But it's just too early to tell exactly what that means and what this is going to entail. So for the first issue, to me, the artwork is the draw, but by the end of it, I hope both the artwork and the story are the draw, and I have a fair amount of confidence that will happen. Team Seeley has a very good track record with Masters of the Universe. He understands the world and the characters incredibly well, and he has a good grasp on story structure and all the different things that make for a good story. This is more of a Turtle story than a Masters of the Universe story, at least so far. And I would say that you should have some familiarity with it before you come into this. This is not necessarily a great jumping on point for new readers. And it particularly helps if you're familiar with the Turtles of Grayskull storyline and the toys. I definitely had a better grasp of what was going on after reading the mini comics. And so if you'd like to do that and you don't own those figures, they are on the foreternia.com forums. And so you go on foreternia.com, go on the forums, and it's going to be in the action figure forum, and there's a thread there, and the mini comics for Turtles of Grayskull are on page 4 and page 9 of that thread. And those are my thoughts on this issue. I wish I had more to say, but I am trying to keep this non-spoiler. And honestly, it is a first issue of a modern comic, so it's just hard to judge a story based on how little you usually get in these first issues. And so I'm going to be coming back once all 4 issues have come out, and I'll do my review of the whole miniseries then. So like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, cowabunga and good journey.